Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine-Light podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 2, The Puffy Shirt. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'm okay. I'm getting better. This past Sunday, I was very emotional, very sort of down in the dumps. My 7th grader, my daughter, went on a class trip this Sunday to Catalina Island in California. And I know she's there having a wonderful time. She was so excited to go. I was excited to send her. But man, it is really tough. This is the first time in her entire life she has been away from us for this long. And we don't have any communication with her. It's really, really hard. But I'm just taking comfort in the fact that I know she's having an amazing time. They've done this trip a billion times at this school. Everyone in charge is really experienced. So I feel really secure that she's safe and that she's doing well. But it is really hard to, not see or hear from your kid for a long time. I mean, it's been only a couple of days, but I won't get to see her for another 3 days. And so, I was just kind of struggling with that on Sunday. I was really, really sad. I laid on the couch for like hours, just trying to cheer myself up, watching the things that normally cheer me up. But man, I was in a funk, but I've gotten better. I'm sort of putting it out of my mind that I haven't seen my kid in like 3 days and won't see her again for another 3 days. And I have no way of getting in touch with her. Okay. I can't keep talking about it because I'm going to get very worried and upset. No, I know she's having a great time and I cannot wait to hear all of the details about this wonderful trip. But until then, I will just have to deal with this very temporary sort of empty nest syndrome. It's not even really empty. I can't even compare it to what people go through when their kids go away to college. I know this, but I'm getting a very slight taste of that with this class trip with my daughter. And it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. All right, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for the Puffy Shirt is as follows. The still unemployed George is forced to move in with his parents. Kramer dates a clothing designer who is a low talker. While having dinner with her, Jerry unwittingly agrees to wear one of her puffy pirate-style shirts during a Today Show appearance that Elaine set up to promote a homeless benefit. George embarks on a career as a hand model. This episode was written by Larry David. All right, we start out in Jerry's apartment. George is miserable. He has to move back in with his parents. He's just out of money. There's no way he can be on his own anymore. Jerry's trying to cheer him up, saying it's only temporary. It's only until you find another job. But George just can't stop thinking about how crazy his parents are. Jerry and George then have this sort of back and forth about how insane their parents are. We find out that George's dad wears his sneakers in the pool. Jerry's mom has never set foot in a natural body of water, and that George's mom has never laughed. Kramer enters, and he's so confused by this. Why do you want to move back in there? No, I don't want to, George says. Then he offers up Jerry's place. Well, why don't you move in here? Yeah, right. George knows that's ridiculous. And then Kramer says, well, you can move in with me. I think we can all figure out why George would never want to do that. Moving on, we are at the Costanza's house. They're moving George in. Estelle is already irritated. She's telling the guys to be careful. They just painted. She can't believe how much stuff George has. Jerry tries to tell her a joke. He wants to get her to laugh, but she's not interested. Tell it to the audience. She offers bologna sandwiches. No one is interested in that. No one eats bologna anymore. She offers Jerry to take them, give them to someone in your building. Jerry's like, I don't think I'd be comfortable with that. They hear someone honking outside. Kramer has to move the car. Jerry says they're going to get going. George sort of leaps up from his chair. He's desperate for them to stay. He asks them what they're doing later. And Jerry tells him that he and Elaine are having dinner with Kramer and his new girlfriend, and that she's this low talker. You can never hear anything she says. George says, well, maybe he'll meet up with them. But Estelle says, no, George, we're going out to eat tonight with your father. You can see George is instantly deflated with that news. Jerry leaves, and George has a moment just staring at his mother, eating a bologna sandwich, looking just annoyed as usual. He buries his face in his hands and says, "Oh my God." Next scene, we're at the dinner date with Kramer, Jerry, and Elaine, and Leslie, who is Kramer's date. And they're all chatting, having a good time. Elaine is telling her about how Kramer had the idea about a pizza place where you make your own pie. And Kramer still stands by it. Well, that was a good one. Then Leslie asks a question, but we can't hear anything. Jerry and Elaine have to lean in and ask her to repeat herself, which she does. And they haven't heard her again, and they pretend to hear her, though. And this just say, yeah. Kramer then shares that Leslie is a clothing designer, and she's come up with this new look. It's a puffy shirt. Yeah, it's all puffy, like the pirates used to wear. It's a new look for men. Oh, a puffy shirt. Kramer loves the idea. He thinks it's the right time for it. Leslie then says something funny. We can't hear it, but Kramer heard it, and he laughs so hard. He's so amused by what she said. Meanwhile, Elaine and Jerry just are confused. Kramer exits to go to the bathroom, and there's a sort of awkward silent moment with Elaine, Jerry, and Leslie. But Elaine breaks the silence and says that Jerry is going to be on the Today Show on Friday to promote this charity benefit that she volunteers for with Goodwill Industries. Then Leslie, low talk, asks a question, and you can just tell Elaine and Jerry are exhausted at this point to have her repeat herself and say, what would you say? So they just kind of say, oh, yeah, sure. She inaudibly asks something else, and they both say, yes. They just keep responding positively. The actress who plays Leslie is Wendell Meldrum, and she was best known for her roles on Knots Landing and The Wonder Years. I think she's great as Leslie. I really enjoy her performance. This scene is a fun one because she has to act, but I just would think as an actor, it's so fun. You don't really have to memorize any lines. You just have to sort of pretend you're saying something. And I guess I don't know that for sure. I was hoping they would clarify that maybe in the Notes About Nothing or any of the other behind the scenes extras, but they didn't say whether or not she had scripted lines that they maybe just didn't mic her for, or maybe she just had to pretend to say stuff. That's just the nerdy actor thing I would love to know. But what a fun day on set. You don't have to worry about knowing lines. You do have to know your cues, but yeah, I would just think that's really fun. I also love her angry performance at the end of the episode, really yelling at Jerry. So much fun. What a fun role to play as Leslie. I am sad to report that Wendell Meldrum died last year. Apparently, she had a very short illness and died at the age of 66. My take on this scene, I think it's a really fun scene. I like that we get to see the low talking in action after we hear Jerry talking about it or teeing it up in the end of the last scene. It already sounds funny when Jerry says it, and it's so relatable. But to see it in action, it's really satisfying. I'm glad that they did that. And back to it being relatable, I think we've all had to deal with a low talker, and we've all nodded along because it gets embarrassing and sort of tiresome to keep asking them to repeat themselves. It's a lot of work. This is something that Seinfeld just does so well, a relatable topic that we can all say, yes, I have been through that. JLD's performance, it's more just reactionary, a lot of facial expressions, which is fun, and she does an awesome job with, of course, but there's really not much to her part in this scene. All right, next we are at the dinner with the Costanzas. Estelle suggests that George take a civil service test, but George thinks he's above that. He's a college graduate. He doesn't want to be a mailman. Meanwhile, Frank is excited about his silver dollar. He had a silver dollar collection, and he couldn't spend them. He had some kind of a phobia. Estelle asks George, what are you going to do? And he doesn't know, but he knows he has some kind of a talent, something to offer, but he just doesn't know what it is. Frank, still taken by his silver dollar reminiscence, does a little magic trick, disappearing trick for George. And we get another, oh my God, from George. This is just torture. Frank doesn't like the waiter either. He looks like he's deliberately ignoring their table. He's snapping at him. See? Doesn't want to come over here. George can't take it anymore. He gets up. Estelle says, George, where are you going? I got a lot of thinking to do. While walking out of the restaurant, George collides with a woman and spills her bag. As he's helping her pick up all of her belongings, she notices his hands and that they're quite exquisite. She asks, have you ever done any hand modeling? She gives George her card and says, give me a call. We see her card and turns out she is an agent for specialty models. The actress who plays this agent is Deborah May, and she was a regular on Days of Our Lives and The Larry Sanders Show. I really like her. She definitely gives off that sort of no-nonsense businesswoman vibe right off the bat. It's not a big role, but look what you've done. You've spilled my bag. It's very dramatic. I like the way she delivers that line. Also, just really quick, this is the first appearance of Jerry Stiller as Frank Costanza. Now, he did go back and re-record the handicap spot scenes that was originally done by the other actor who played Frank Costanza, but this was his first network appearance as Frank Costanza. And I think we can all agree, just the beginning of the Frank Costanza era with Jerry Stiller, and holy shit, is it hilarious and just legendary. He's so wonderful. And this first episode with him is no exception to that. All right, next we're back in Jerry's apartment. George has his hands up to Jerry's face. Jerry doesn't get it. They're hands. And Jerry tries to compare his hands to George's, but George is totally insulted. I mean, how could you even compare your hands to my hands? This is a 1 in a million hand. And I do love Jerry's line, well, that's what comes from avoiding manual labor your whole life. George is so excited. He really feels like fate had something to do with this. I mean, he gets up from the table, he runs into this woman. It's amazing. Kramer enters. He shakes George's hand, and he has one of those toy buzzers that buzzes into George's palm, and he freaks out. And Kramer's like, what? It's just a toy. He's not aware, and Jerry tells him, well, George has become a hand model. A hand model? Well, Kramer looks over his hands and is just taken aback by how gorgeous George's hands are. George leaves with his protective oven mitts on. After he leaves, Kramer tells Jerry how ever since he agreed to wear the Puffy shirt on the Today Show, Leslie has been getting all these orders from boutiques, department stores. Jerry kind of nods along, Since I what? Kramer reminds him, well, you agreed to wear the Puffy shirt. And then he opens this garment bag and we see the Puffy shirt in all of its glory, all of its piratey glory, I should say. Jerry cannot compute this. When the hell did I do this? Well, Jerry and Kramer together figure out that Leslie apparently asked Jerry to wear this shirt on the Today Show. He agreed because he couldn't hear her. Jerry's in full-on panic mode when this is realized and says, I can't wear this on TV. Kramer says, well, you have to because they're producing them based on the condition that you wear them. The factory's already making them. They're making these? Kramer really does try to convince him this is a good thing. This is the next big thing in fashion in the 90s. You're going to be the first pirate. But I don't want to be a pirate. Next, we're back at the Costanza's house. George is giving himself a manicure on the couch, really concentrating, getting his hands looking good. Estelle is just beaming with pride. She always knew he had gorgeous hands, right, Frank? Who the hell did you ever mention his hands to? I mentioned his hands to plenty of people. The Costanzas keep bickering while George is trying to concentrate. He asks for a scissor, and Estelle carelessly hands them to him with the point facing out. And she gets yelled at for that. I'm sorry. I'll try to be more careful. Then she asks George if he wants Jell-O. Frank blows up because she put bananas in the Jell-O. She did that because George likes the bananas. Let him have bananas on the side. Oh, George cannot take it anymore. Stress is very damaging to the epidermis, and his hands need to be in tip-top shape. He's got a photo shoot the next day. As he's leaving, Estelle asks about the Jell-O. George says, I'll take it in my room. All right, next we're at the Today Show in Jerry's dressing room. Jerry exits the bathroom in the Puffy shirt. Kramer thinks he looks incredible. I mean, it's better than anything he owns. He looks awesome. Jerry is pissed. He thinks he looks ridiculous. There's a knock at the door. Kramer answers it, and it's Elaine. She's so excited. She tells Kramer that she just ran into Bryant Gumbel, and he said he might help out at the benefit. She then looks over at Jerry and laughs and laughs. What is that? She asks what the hell he's wearing, why he's wearing it, and he explains that it's the puffy shirt that the low talker asked him to wear. And then she realizes, well, you can't wear that on the show. Jerry, you're promoting a benefit to clothe homeless people. You're all puffed up. Well, Jerry says he has to. There's orders based on him wearing it. Elaine argues that he's supposed to be a compassionate person, but that he looks like he's going to swing it on the chandelier. There's a knock at the door. The PA comes in and says, it's time to go. He takes one look at Jerry and says, is that what you're wearing? My take on this scene, this is the most JLD has to do in the whole episode in this scene, and she delivers what she's given. I love the way she turns from laughing at Jerry to sort of realizing he has to wear the shirt on the show, and just that shift in emotions really well done. And I always loved JLD's laugh acting. I've talked about it before on this podcast. It's so funny. She does it so convincingly. And also the way she says, what is that? Like, huh? So well delivered. And as I was thinking about this episode and the fact that, well, Elaine doesn't have too much to do, but I think we can add the puffy shirt to the list of ways these guys have screwed Elaine over. I mean, this is for the organization that she volunteers for. She set up this whole thing with Jerry on the Today Show, and now he's going to appear in this awful shirt. So the list just keeps getting bigger of the ways George, Jerry, and Kramer screw over Elaine. All right, next we're at George's photo shoot. Everyone on the set is just overcome by George's hands. I mean, they just compare him to this legend in the hand modeling business, Ray McKigney. Well, unfortunately, Ray had a tragic story. He pretty much, in a nutshell, no pun intended, he jacked off too much with his hand and it became deformed. George assures them, you know what, I have more self-control than that, and that he won a contest. Next, we go to the actual Today Show interview. Jerry is being interviewed by Bryant Gumbel wearing the puffy shirt. Bryant Gumbel introduces Jerry and mentions the whole Goodwill Industries benefit. But before he can get into that, he mentions that Jerry is wearing a very, very unusual shirt. We see Kramer and Leslie off stage watching. I mean, Leslie is just beaming with pride. She's so excited that her shirt is on the Today Show. Meanwhile, Bryant Gumbel won't stop mentioning it. You know, looks like kind of like a pirate, you know, puffy. And maybe this could be a whole new look for you, Jerry, a pirate comedian. Then we see a shot of Elaine watching and just cringing off stage. Jerry tries to get back to the whole benefit thing, trying to get this interview back on track. Bryant brings it back to the puffy shirt and Jerry just snaps at him. Look, it's not my shirt. He agreed to wear it. It's the stupidest shirt he's ever seen. We hear a voice off camera scream, "You bastard!" Bryant Gumbel asks Jerry, "Did you hear that?" "That I heard." The next scene, we are back at George's photo shoot. George is posing with the watch on, and the photographer takes a few shots and says, "That's it, we're done." George is handed a check, and wow, that's a wrap on George's hand modeling photo shoot. The photographer's assistant, a very gorgeous woman, asks George out after the photo shoot. The actress who plays this assistant is Kim Gillingham, and she appeared on many shows, sort of made the rounds on all the 90s sitcoms as a guest star. And now it looks like she's more of a coach. She coaches actors, writers, and producers. And I think she's really cute. I mean, it's such a short scene, but I like how she's sort of nervous to talk to George. And yeah, I think she's perfect for the role. Then we see George blissfully running through the park with oven mitts on, totally joyful. All right, back to the Today Show dressing room. Leslie is now yelling. She's the opposite of a low talker, unloading on Jerry, shouting that he ruined her career. Jerry tells her that everyone can hear her. Keep your voice down. Well, she doesn't give a damn. Well, he points out that if she had spoken this loudly in the first place, none of this would have happened. George enters. Man, he is busting. He's got this big check. He was told he has the most beautiful hands, and this gorgeous woman asked him out. He's got it all. Elaine walks over saying, "I've never noticed your hands." He holds them up for her, and she says, "Yeah, real nice." George notices Jerry's shirt. He, of course, starts laughing and mocking it. Leslie's in the background. You can see her hearing all of this. George is saying, "You look like a complete idiot." I mean, he wouldn't wipe his... Uh-oh. Leslie pushes George right into the ironing board where George clutches onto the still hot iron and screams. I did want to mention real quick a little background catch. There's some art on the wall in the background, and it's all triangles. Did Elaine's ex-boyfriend sell some art to the Today Show? Because it's triangle art in the background. So just wanted to point that out if you're so inclined to rewatch the episode. All right, the last scene of the episode, we're in a restaurant. George's hands are all bandaged up, and Elaine is helping him with his coffee. She asks if he's ready for a sip, but nope. Hot, hot, hot. George is so pissed. His hands are ruined. How could you forget to turn off an iron? Kramer was excited about Jerry wearing the Puffy shirt. George's whole life is ruined because of the Puffy shirt. Well, Jerry suffered as well. That benefit was a really bad gig for him. He was being heckled with pirate lingo the whole time. Elaine also was a victim, got her fired from the benefit committee. All right, here's another catch, and I've noticed this for years. I mean, back when I used to watch this episode on my VHS tape that I used to tape Seinfeld every week, after she says, "Well, it got me fired from the benefit committee," we go back to a shot where we see Jerry kind of shrug and then take a sip of his coffee. But watch Jerry. He is giving Elaine, I don't even know what kind of look. It looks like he's out of character. I don't know if maybe this was a moment where they maybe broke a lot, or maybe there's no bloopers of this moment, but he is just kind of sort of staring at Elaine. I don't know. You need to see it for yourself. I'd love to know some interpretation of what kind of look Jerry is giving either Elaine or Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It doesn't seem like he's in character, but he definitely just kind of lingers on her for a little bit. All right, back to the scene. Kramer says that he dumped Leslie. You know, he just can't be with someone whose life is in complete disarray. Of course, George feels a little bit exposed with that statement. Can't help but feel like, well, my life sucks right now too. And Jerry asks where all the shirts went, and he said, "Give them to Goodwill." As they exit the restaurant, a couple of homeless men are out there. They are wearing the Puffy shirts and asking for change. "Spare some change for an old buccaneer." Jerry gives him some money and says, "You know, it's not a bad looking shirt." Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Excuse me? What's that? Do you hear these responses a lot? Do people seem to have trouble hearing what you say? Do you feel ashamed about your quiet voice? Don't let the volume police shame your naturally quiet tone. You were born with a low speaking volume, and that is okay. If this sounds like you and your experience, you need Dr. Leslie's award-winning book, I See You Nodding and Lying: My Life as a Low Talker. After suffering for years and being shamed as a low talker, Dr. Leslie decided to tell her story in a book. Because reading doesn't require the perfect volume. Dr. Leslie's book has helped so many low talkers out there. Here is Rachel Bannister. I was so sick of people telling me to speak up. I was always accused of causing misunderstandings because I hadn't spoken louder. Dr. Leslie's book really helped me accept my voice as it is, quiet and hard to understand. Dr. Leslie reminds you that your voice is perfect just as it is. She is proud to be the first volume equality activist, giving a low-talking voice to those who haven't been heard very well. Here is an excerpt of the audiobook, read by Dr. Leslie herself. After that day, I lost my boyfriend, my business, and my reputation. He said it was my fault, that if I had spoken louder, the mess never would have happened. Then I thought, wait, isn't he at fault too? He nodded and said, yeah, over and over again. I may be a low talker, but he was worse. He was a nodding, lying son of a bitch. Order I See You Nodding and Lying: My Life as a Low Talker now by calling 555-SHH. That's 555-744-4444. And don't worry, all of our operators are trained to hear low talkers. Love your voice, no matter how quiet it is. And remember the wise words of Dr. Leslie. And we're back. There were quite a few extras actually for this episode, but I'm just going to mention a deleted scene that was part of the extras. Mostly the extras were about the puffy shirt, the design of it, how they created it. It was all very interesting, but not very Elaine-centric. So the deleted scene, however, was an extended conversation with Elaine in the dressing room after she sees Jerry in the shirt and realizes he's going to wear it on the Today Show. She tells Jerry he's making a mockery of the whole project, and Kramer tells her that Leslie's business depends on it and that she hasn't sold a shirt in 2 years. Elaine looks at the shirt and says, I wonder why. She says, he looks like an idiot. And Kramer says, no, he doesn't look like an idiot. He looks like a pirate. And then I actually really liked this moment. Elaine says, but he's not a pirate. There are no pirates. And in case you haven't noticed, we're not on the high seas. It was a really fun exchange. I wish they kept it in, if for nothing else, to give JLD a little bit more screen time. All right, moving on to Contributor Corner. Greg sent in a few thoughts this week, and he says, I always thought this episode was overrated. It's such a preposterous premise, and Jerry has to carry it. I just thought it was more ridiculous than clever. The George story carries much more comedy to me because of the inclusion of Frank and Estelle. Yes, I think George's story is stronger as well. I think that the puffy shirt is definitely more, absurd or just kind of, like you say, ridiculous. I do think that, like I said before, the relatability of having a low talker and misunderstanding something. And I like the whole thing of like committing to something because you're just nodding. But yeah, the whole puffy shirt thing is... I don't know. I still enjoy it. I mean, this is such a classic episode of Seinfeld. I think it's pretty funny. But I agree. The inclusion of Frank and Estelle, and like I said, this is Jerry Stiller's first appearance as Frank, and it just couldn't be a better debut of his acting abilities and what we're in for with future Frank Costanza moments. But I did enjoy the George storyline, I think, a little bit more. Next, Greg says, Elaine's face acting in the scene at the restaurant trying to listen to Kramer's girlfriend is spot on. She does this so well. Oh, yes. JLD, face acting on point every time. And yeah, that was majority of what she had to do in that scene, and I thought it was really funny as well. And finally, Greg says, Elaine doesn't get a ton here, but her performance delivers. The scene where she first sees Jerry in the puffy shirt is gold. And then at the end, she's still supportive, helping George. Their dynamic is the best. I agree. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit with my final notes. But yeah, I think it is really cute when she's helping George with his coffee. It's so cute. Thank you so much, Greg, for contributing. If you would like to become a contributor to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. All right, my favorite Elaine moments. There's not a lot to choose from, unfortunately, but that moment where she sees Jerry in the dressing room and starts laughing, that's definitely my favorite moment. I mean, you don't really get better laugh acting than with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She always does that so well. Okay, my final notes for the episode. This is a very Elaine-light episode of Seinfeld. JLD barely had a plot in the puffy shirt. Now, normally when this is the case, I would do a scene swap because a lot of times there were things where I thought were unnecessary, or we could have just let's get rid of this and put more Elaine in. Honestly, this is kind of tough to do because I enjoy the puffy shirt story and I enjoy George's story. I don't feel like there's a lot of extra fat to trim off here or moments we could have swapped out. But maybe instead of a scene swap, it's more just about inclusion with Elaine. I mean, I would have loved to have Elaine included in the scene at the top where they're discussing George moving home. Her thoughts on that, what she would do if she had to do that or something, or maybe adding some of her parents' insanity. I would have loved to hear that. Or maybe have her in the scene where George announces he's been discovered as a hand model. Have her in that scene with Jerry at his apartment. Because, I mean, hello, that dynamic between George and Elaine is always amazing. So we get a little tease of that dynamic when she says, yeah, real nice in the dressing room. But why didn't we have Elaine there with Jerry as George is talking about how we got discovered? I just think that would have been really fun to see. And we would have just seen a lot more of that George-Elaine dynamic and energy. And you can't have too much of that. So that is sort of my remedy to the disinclusion of JLD in this entire episode. I mean, all in all, it is a classic episode and I really do enjoy it. Even though JLD deserved more screen time, I forgive it because I do LOL a lot in this episode. So I think that's all I can say about the Puffy shirt. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.